Do you know that up to 70% of the money you earn ends up either in the hands of billionaires or the government? Did you know that? That bothers me somehow. 40% of our earnings is tax, I mean you know that already, but a further 20%, one way or another, ends up in the coffers of already rich institutions and elites. I spoke to the brilliant philosopher Brad Evans. Stay to the end of this conversation and let me know what you think of it. It took place on my podcast Under the Skin on Luminary, where we go deep. Brad Evans is a brilliant philosopher. He's got a lot to teach you. He's a critical and radical thinker. Stay to the end.
And of course, it's very easy in a culture like ours, built on gossip, social media, and memes, to ridicule people for hoarding toilet roll. But I know too that people are already observing. Well, we live in a culture where hoarding is commonplace. What is profit? What is wealth? Mm-hmm. And I was thinking the other day, Brad, I heard something on, I can't remember, some history of philosophy thing that was saying that, it was a libertarian philosopher saying that, we just accept that 30 to 40% of our time is spent working for the government in the money that we pay in tax. And then I was wondering, how we would ever understand the further 20 or 30% of our time that's spent so that Jeff Bezos or whoever can accumulate further wealth. I sat and I thought that money, Jeff Bezos didn't suck it out of his own brain. That's resources that are being accumulated and aggregated and collected. And how long before we think, well, the real problem isn't, we have hoarding toilet roll and hand sanitizer. It's that we have created conditions where it's ordinary to have the level of inequality and suffering that we just now accept as absolutely normal.
Mm-hmm. I want to maybe talk about, connecting this question of the virus with what you talked about with Amazon. And I know you also talked about this again in the first kind of video you put out. One thing that's becoming apparent to us is the ways in which actually we are having to come to terms with invisible forces. So, the invisible force of the virus, but also the invisibility of our systems. And we have this kind of, it's a complete irony of our times, or, a contradiction of our times, where we live in an age where apparently everything is visible. We broadcast everything. We've never known more about the world. And yet the real mechanisms of power, down to the very basic levels, are hidden from us. This complete invisibility of social order, social power, social wealth, where it goes, where it comes from, social endangerment, which is completely symbolic now in this virus, and I think that making visible the realm of the invisible to us surely seems like a real purposeful way forward to make better sense of the world in which we are living in, because it has really shown actually that all these kind of systems which we are dependent upon are completely fragile, are completely vulnerable. And I was thinking about, the late French philosopher Paul Virilio said, we still don't know what a virtual accident looks like. I think this is exposing it because, Virilio had this theory that every single technological innovation we have should be defined by its accident. So the plane should be defined by the plane crash. If you build a nuclear bomb, expect it to explode. And he says the same about the internet. We still don't know what a virtual accident looks like. We're now hitting that head on because our systems of life are premised on the virtual absence of their kind of presence, right? We don't know about them. We don't structure them in our minds. And yet they are now crushing before us. And part of our anxiety and frustration is we have no idea how to deal with it. We don't know where food production comes from. If Sainsbury's says the food's going to be there tomorrow, I've got no idea whether I can trust it or not. Because it's all virtual to me, it's all abstract to me. And I think that's what you're right, it's the abstract is completely crushing before our feet, but it's leaving us with no answers, no knowledge, no understanding. And this is the complete contradiction then. In a world full of knowledge, it's showing we know nothing. And I think that's a real kind of, a real source of anxiety for many people.
Yes, we've been lacquered with layer after layer of obfuscation. Perhaps from agriculture onwards, we become more and more remote from our own reality and our own nature. Mm-hmm. And It seems to me interesting too that this has been preceded by such extreme ecological concern, and one of the sort of more obvious and more observed positives that's emerged from this crisis has been, oh wow, look, emissions have been reduced and pollution is falling in these areas and above these cities. And I sense that it's, as you say, Brad, we've become so accustomed in living in conceptual systems and constructed systems. We're not living lives where this is our community of 100 people. My role within this community is this. I do this. This is the way I get food. This is where the food comes from. We make it here. This is how I'm involved. We've become entirely absent from our own existence, and I don't think that this is me speaking, of course, how would I know, entirely from a position of privilege where I consume products in a particular way. I remember from when I was poor, I had no idea where I was getting pot noodle from or cans of tuna or whatever it was I was surviving then. I was absented from my own life. There was this kind of rupture, and the sort of spiritual philosopher Eckhart Tolle said to me recently, you cannot ever be content in the conceptual mind, in the mind of comparison. Unless we fully appreciate the aliveness of the exact moment we're in, we will always be suffering to some degree. And I have this feeling that there is as you said, that this, from your perspective as a philosopher, that presents you with a time to think and reflect, and that is obviously essential to your identity and essential to your nature. And I think that for all of us, there's a sort of a opportunity for our real nature to not emerge, but at least to somehow be witnessed. Now, I'm quick to point out that I'm aware that for some people it's going to be in the face of very direct suffering. For a great many people, it's going to be in the face of economic suffering and real fear and isolation and frustration. But what I feel, the thing that I am most curious about and very unsure how to handle personally is that we are being presented with a chance to review the validity of our systems and the values, particularly the values that are not our own, under which we abide.
Well, what do you think about that? Do you agree with Brad Evans? Do you think new systems are possible? Do you think that this is the moment for radical change? What is going to be the engine? What is it going to take for you personally to make change? I ask myself this question all the time. Let me know in the comments below. Please sign up to my mailing list so we can stay in constant contact. And if you are free, stay free.